Welcome to the Deep Dive, your shortcut to being truly well-informed.
hmm
We grab a whole stack of sources, pull out the most important bits, and, give you surprising facts with just enough humor to keep things interesting.
That's the idea.
Today, we're on, let's say, a crucial mission. We want to give you a really comprehensive, no stone unturned summary of one specific chapter from the official SAT study guide.
hmm
The goal is basically to cover every essential thing you need for test success. Think of it as, like, your ultimate cheat sheet for what really matters in this chapter.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Our job here is to take what often feels like, well, a huge amount of information in those official guides
Yeah, they can be dense.
and boil it down into clear, actionable insights. We've really dug into this chapter, focusing on the core skills it talks about, the strategies it suggests,
Right.
the different kinds of questions you'll see, the examples they give, why the practice exercises are useful, and definitely those key official tips straight from the College Board.
Total clarity, practical advice, that's what we're aiming for.
Precisely.
And the actual material we used for this deep dive. We've carefully gone through excerpts from the official SAT study guide, specifically looking at the content across pages 6 through 14.
Yep, those specific pages.
So you can expect us to lay out everything important from those pages. We'll do it quickly, but, thoroughly. Help you grab the critical stuff without wading through it all yourself. Let's unpack this.
Okay.
So diving into pages 6 to 14. The first big chunk really seems to be about decoding the core skills you need for the SAT. It's like not just facts, but foundational abilities.
Right. It's foundational.
For instance, in the reading section, the guide really hammers home what it calls evidence-based reading. And that's not just, basic comprehension. It's the very specific skill of finding and using direct support from the text for your answers. Often means pointing to the exact lines.
Like being a detective with the text.
Totally. Being a textual detective.
And what's interesting is how the guide breaks that down even more. It talks about techniques like active reading, underlining, making notes, summarizing paragraphs as you go.
Oh, yeah. Crucial for the long passages.
Absolutely. And it also covers how to spot the main idea, find specific supporting details, and make inferences based only on what the text gives you.
Nothing outside the text.
Exactly. It even gets into figuring out an author's tone or purpose, which is, a step beyond just understanding the words. It's about really getting the message.
Yeah.
Building up that analytical toolkit.
Definitely. And then the chapter switches gears to writing and language skills. Equally critical, obviously. Here, the guide really drills down into the, let's say, the nitty-gritty of standard English conventions.
Yeah, the grammar stuff.
Right, like subject-verb agreement, using pronouns correctly, parallel structure, punctuation, all that. It gives clear examples of how these rules actually show up on the test. But it's not just grammar, is it? It also emphasizes expression of ideas.
Precisely. Expression of ideas. That's where the guide explains how you can make a passage clearer, more concise, better styled.
Right.
It walks you through spotting redundant words, maybe awkward sentences, or places where the logic doesn't quite track.
Okay.
It gives really explicit advice on choosing the best word for the context, combining sentences effectively, making sure the transitions between ideas make sense. It's like a mini masterclass in effective writing, really.
Refining arguments, making it impactful. Yeah.
Exactly.
And then, of course, there's math. The guide splits it into key areas pretty neatly. You've got heart of algebra,
The core algebra.
linear equations, inequalities, systems of equations, functions. Then there's problem solving and data analysis, which is all about ratios, percentages, proportional reasoning, and reading graphs and charts, making sense of data.
And what really stands out in the math parts of the guide is how much it emphasizes multi-step problems.
Not just one calculation.
No, definitely not. And interpreting word problems so you can set up the right equations. For the data analysis part, it often goes beyond just calculating. You need to understand concepts like mean, median, how data is spread out.
Statistical thinking.
Right. And the Passport to Advanced Math section, that tackles the more complex stuff. Quadratics, exponentials, polynomials, manipulating tricky algebraic expressions.
Okay.
But the guide is good here, too. It gives step-by-step breakdowns for these harder problems. Shows you the logic, not just the answer.
The pathway, yeah. So after laying out all these skills, the chapter jumps right into how to actually use them under pressure, the key test-taking strategies.
Because knowing it isn't enough.
Exactly. It's about navigating the test itself. And one of the biggest things is time management.
Always crucial.
The guide gives pretty concrete advice on pacing for each section, like spend about a minute per question for most math problems, or how to tackle those long reading passages without getting bogged down.
And what's great is it doesn't just say manage your time. It gives you actual frameworks.
Like what?
Like it advises you not to get stuck on one tough question for too long. Flag it, move on, come back later if you have time.
Good advice.
Yeah, and it really emphasizes reading the question carefully first before you even look at the answers. And for multiple choice, try to predict your own answer before you check their options.
So you don't get swayed by tricky wrong answers.
Exactly. It helps you focus and avoid those distractors, the wrong answers that look really plausible.
And speaking of those, the guide really talks up the process of elimination.
Oh yeah, classic strategy.
It shows how just systematically crossing out the answers you know are wrong often makes the right one pop out, even if you weren't sure at first. Builds confidence, improves accuracy.
Definitely.
And, for the inevitable test day nerves, it actually includes practical tips for managing anxiety. Deep breathing, getting there early to avoid that last-minute rush.
Yes, it takes a sort of holistic view, recognizing that performance isn't purely academic. It gives surprisingly down-to-earth advice, like getting enough sleep, eating properly beforehand, using the breaks effectively.
Makes sense.
And it clarifies something really important for the current digital SAT. There's no penalty for wrong answers.
Oh, that's huge.
It is. So the official advice is answer every single question, even if you have to make a strategic guess. That alone can boost your score.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah.
Which leads us nicely into understanding the actual SAT question types and formats. This part's interesting because the SAT uses very specific patterns you can learn to spot.
Recognizable patterns.
Like for reading, the guide breaks down things like paired passages. You get two related texts, and questions ask you to compare them or see how one affects the other.
Right, or those command of evidence questions.
Yeah, the ones that make you point to the exact lines in the passage that back up your previous answer.
And what's super helpful is how the guide explains the specific challenge of each question type. For instance, in writing and language, besides grammar, it talks about rhetorical synthesis questions.
Sounds fancy. What's that?
It's basically deciding if adding or deleting a sentence would make the paragraph flow better or make the argument stronger. It's about effectiveness, not just correctness.
Ah, okay. Rhetoric.
Yeah, and for math, it gives examples of those multi-step word problems where you have to translate a real-world situation into math terms.
The translation is key.
It is. And it highlights the difference in strategy between questions where a calculator might help versus ones where it really doesn't, even though you can use it on the digital SAT for everything.
Okay. And to really make all this stick, the chapter uses a ton of examples and practice exercises.
Essential.
It's one thing to read about a strategy, another to see it applied and then try it yourself. The guide uses specific examples, often annotated, walking you through the thinking process.
Shows you why an answer is right and why the others are wrong, those common distractors.
Right.
And yeah, the value of those practice exercises is massive. The guide doesn't just give you questions. It gives detailed explanations for every answer choice.
Even the wrong ones.
Even the wrong ones. So you can figure out why you made a mistake, understand where your weak spots are, and adjust your approach.
Learning from mistakes.
Exactly. The chapter really pushes this cycle. Practice, review, refine. It stresses that just doing tons of problems isn't the point. It's understanding why you got it wrong and really internalizing the right way. Active learning, not just passive practice.
Makes sense. Now, beyond the content and strategies, there are always those little nuggets of wisdom, the official tips, the practical advice straight from the source.
The insider stuff.
This chapter pulls together clear recommendations for, the whole SAT process. Before test day, for example, it suggests laying out your stuff the night before ID, calculator, pencils.
Reduces that morning scramble and stress.
Totally.
Yeah, these are the tips that can genuinely make a difference on the day. It talks about arriving early, staying calm, using those breaks to stretch, maybe have a snack, clear your head.
Resetting between sections.
Exactly. And it also gives important pointers on understanding your score report, what the subscores mean. Cross-test scores, percentiles, helps you see what your score actually represents in the bigger picture for college apps.
Right.
And it explicitly warns about common mistakes, like rushing through passages, overthinking and second-guessing yourself too much, or falling for those really obvious trap answers.
Good warnings to keep in mind. Now, for anyone maybe new to the SAT or just needing a quick review, getting the key terms defined simply is super important.
Absolutely foundational.
And the chapter does a good job here giving plain English explanations. Like, it clarifies evidence-based reading just means you always need proof directly from the text.
No outside knowledge, no unsupported inferences, just what the text says.
Right.
And terms like command of evidence are clearly defined as, picking the lines that best support a claim or a previous answer. Rhetoric, which can sound kind of academic.
Yeah, a bit intimidating.
The guide just simplifies it to mean using language effectively, especially when you're trying to persuade or describe something. And data analysis is clearly about interpreting info from graphs and tables, not just pure calculation.
Just making the terms accessible.
Exactly. Gets everyone on the same page right from the start.
Okay, and finally, something that's often missed but really important for you, the learner, is connecting all this knowledge to real-world application. This chapter does it, maybe subtly, but it does bridge the gap between SAT prep and broader thinking skills. It shows how this stuff matters beyond just the test.
And what's really cool here is realizing that the skills you sharpen for a test, like the SAT critical reading, logical reasoning, clear communication, these are valuable everywhere.
They really are universal.
Totally. They're the skills you need for success in college, in your career. Think about how reading carefully helps you understand, a complex work document or analyze news critically.
Or how problem-solving and data skills help with budgeting, making smart choices.
Exactly. Navigating data is part of almost every job now. So looking at the big picture, prepping for the SAT isn't just about getting a score.
It's more than that.
It's a chance to hone tools you'll use your whole life. The best kind of learning always connects back to that wider relevance, I think.
So what does this all boil down to? Our deep dive today, it really aimed to give you a clear, concise path through this important chapter of the official SAT study guide. The goal was helping you feel truly well-informed. We looked at how the guide sets out the core skills, gives you smart test-taking strategies, breaks down all the question types, shows the power of examples and practice, and shares those really valuable official tips.
Right.
We even touched on how it defines key terms simply, and just now, how it connects all this learning to your real-world analytical toolkit.
Which brings up, I think, an important question for you to consider. How can the discipline, the analytical skills, the strategic thinking you've been practicing for tests like the SAT, actually help you tackle other complex challenges in life, beyond the exam itself?
That's interesting.
Think about how these methods give you a kind of blueprint for approaching any new, maybe intimidating task, whether it's a big academic project or a tricky problem at work. It's a transferable skill set.
A powerful thought to end on. Thank you for joining us on the deep dive.